Hey everybody, and welcome to the podcast. I'm James, that's Katie, and of course that makes this the first ever episode number 2 of Cloud Control.
Wow, this is just the joke that keeps on giving. If there was any questions of how we're going to start episode 3, you can take your best guess now.
You'll have to listen in to figure it out because you can't tell exactly what it's going to be. You know what, though? It's still funny to me. I don't know if anyone else cares about it, or I know you find it funny. I think it's hilarious.
Oh, I find it funny. I find it funny for the long-term commitment of how much less but also simultaneously more funny it is by the 37th episode.
I'll have to check back in. Episode 37, are we sick of it yet? Has it changed? Who knows? But yeah, welcome to the show, everybody. This, of course, is Cloud Control, the show formerly known as the Circles and Squares PlayStation Podcast. And now we like to talk about video games from all over the place. So look forward to that coming up on the show today. Of course, as we always do, we both brought a topic to talk about today. For me, that is going to be a game called Coffee Talk. For Kate, she's got Inscryption. And then our featured topic of the show today at the end is going to be something we've been talking about doing for a really long time. Who knows how it's going to turn out, but we're going to do some video game Mad Libs and see if they end up being funny or just kind of painfully awkward. And either way, it should be a good time on the show.
Usually a good 50-50 with these things.
It's a good 50-50, right? Yeah. So yeah, if you want to get in touch, we will also be doing listener mail right at the end of the show. And you can write in a question or comment for us to get read out on one of our future episodes if you would like, over at CloudControlPod at proton.me. That's proton.me. If you'd like to get in touch, or of course our Twitter at CloudControlPod if you'd rather get in touch with us that way. But I think that's all the housekeeping stuff to get through, Kate. So let me start off, and I'm going to tell you about a game called Coffee Talk, which I played recently on Xbox Game Pass. And this game, for people that have not heard of it, is sort of it's a really good visual novel style game, or at least it has a really nice art style. You know, there's your cat is really, really distracting me. This is Neville, everybody.
That's Neville.
Video listeners
decided it was a good time to walk on my keyboard, so
welcome to the show, Neville, the official mascot pet of Cloud Control. So
I think
Coffee Talk, everybody. Coffee Talk. So this is a game that I think we saw in a lot of different presentations last year coming out. It's a visual novel where you are the manager of a coffee shop in Seattle. It's set in 2020, although it's an alternate reality Seattle. And this is something I didn't know really going into the game, but it's set in sort of a fantasy universe where it's not just humans. There's all kinds of different mythological creatures. They're all kind of humanoid, but there's werewolves and vampires. There's a succubus character. There's a lot of different, you can see here actually for anyone on the video chat, you can see right now there's she's got pink skin and horns and stuff. So it's pretty cool. And there's a lot of themes about inclusivity, and it sort of parallels a lot of the same sort of racial disparities we have in the real world, today, except they kind of use these mythological races to sort of paint the same picture, but in a more, I guess, fantastical viewpoint.
Fantasy kind of.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So the premise is really cool. I mean, these characters are coming in and you're making them different coffee, and you're chatting to them, and they're sort of telling you, these different life stories that come in. There's one that's a couple and they're going through a breakup, and there's another one where the character, actually, for anyone watching the video, she's the main character in the customer that comes in, the girl with the green hair, and she's actually a writer, and so she's trying to write a story the whole time you're playing, and it's kind of a through line of of the game is the story that she's writing. And so really you're just running this bar, you're making coffee for people, and the premise, to me, that sounded so appealing, and the aesthetic is really nice. I think the pixel art's great. There's the rain going on the outside. You got the lo-fi music on there, and it's got all the ingredients of a recipe that's something I'm going to be really interested in, except I just feel for some reason it didn't quite click with me. And I shouldn't say for some reason, because there is one kind of major reason why, which is that
there might be a reason.
It just has that ooh-woo sense of humor where the characters are putting their fingers together and everything.
Oh, how could you possibly think I'm cute? Like
Yeah,
that kind
exactly.
of
Exactly. Like
yeah.
there's so many times where the characters
Yeah.
they're saying something meaningful to you, but then, someone else sits down at the bar and the character whispers to you as the bartender and they're like, "Oh, do you think that person was flirting with me?" Or it's always about like, something like that. And there's even one character in the game who is one of the most interesting characters. His name is Neil, and he comes in, he sits down at the coffee shop and he's in a full spaceman suit, like obviously named after Neil Armstrong, like bright orange space outfit,
Right.
like the bubble helmet with like a cosmic space, set up inside of it. And he comes in and he's like, "I'm an alien, I'm from outer space, I'm here to learn about human culture, and I'm here to the coffee shop because I want to observe people, and what better place than this coffee shop?" And like that's such a cool premise. Like I would love to get to know that character. But then they come in the next day, and the next time you talk to them, you find out like their mission from their extraterrestrial planet is to figure out how about human reproduction and how like sex happens basically. And it's like that's why this person had to come to Earth, like just because you wanted to write about
Yeah.
that. Like could they not have been on a mission for
Like
anything else?
yeah, you couldn't have thought of anything that might have been more interesting for like a race to have wanted to discover. Like
Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. And I mean, fair enough, right? Like
I'm
as a one-off that would be fine, but it's just there's so many little undertones of like sexual tension or like this type of stuff, and I just really was put off by that to the point where I'm almost like, even if this game, the rest of it was all right, I would feel embarrassed to recommend it to somebody because they might think I'm like interested in that type of humor, which I'm really
is
not.
is it like when you play Doki Doki because you know the twist, but then you actually just have to play that dating game for the first like half an
No, no, no,
hour?
no, no. No, it's nowhere near that bad. It's not a dating sim. Like there's no like
Right.
shots where there's some girl falls over and you like see up her skirt or something like that. Like they're
Mhm.
always sitting at this bar. It's never like overt and gross, but it's just there's too much of like undertones of that to me, and it just
Right.
feel like the characters could have been given different motivations. That's all. And
Yeah.
that
I totally understand what you mean, and it's just the like it sounds like the frequency of it as well, where it's like, maybe not every single character that comes into the coffee bar is like, identifies as socially awkward and like has
yeah,
trouble
yeah, yeah.
asking a girl out on a date or whatever.
Exactly. And to be fair, like not all of the characters are like that, but it's enough where my impression coming away after beating the game, played for probably 3 or 4 hours, like it's not very long, is that like that's the feeling that I'm getting from at least half of the cast of the game, which is like probably 8 or 9 different characters, that like 50% of them are something along those lines, right? The other
Mhm.
thing to bring into attention, I guess, before I kind of wrap up on the game, is like this is actually what's on the screen right now, is the mini game where you make the coffee, because of course, along with being the visual novel, you're also running this cafe, and people will come in and they'll say like, "Oh, I want a coffee with something bitter," and so you'll have to bring up your ingredient list, and as you go through the game, you sort of stock your cafe with more ingredients. So at the start, you kind of have like coffee grinds and tea and milk and like sugar, for example. And then, through the next few days, you might get mint or cinnamon or just different things that you can put in. And so the orders start getting a little bit more complicated. And you'll have people that'll, instead of ordering a specific drink, like, "Oh, I want an espresso," they'll say, "Oh, I'm looking for something like tea, but it's got to be kind of sweet and warm." And so you'll have to kind of play around with the ingredients and figure out what they want. And again, that concept is really cool. Like to me, that's like what drew me into the game, because I have an extreme caffeine
Mhm.
addiction. But the problem is that like the
I've got a question.
yeah.
Did you go so far as to every time they came with a request, like, "I will make that in the game and in real life," and you just got, like, absolutely sauced playing
Yeah,
this?
if I had half the ingredients at my house, I don't have some of these things they have in the game, but I would
Mm.
totally have done it. There's actually a few different kinds of coffee. Like I'd never thought about putting ginger in my coffee before, for example. But there's a character that
Yeah?
ordered that in this game, and I'm like, "Oh man, I should go try that now." Um, yeah, but
Mhm.
what I was getting to is just that regardless if you make a drink that they like or you don't, like you can get it right, obviously. If someone asks for an espresso, you can make them a tea if you want and just hand it to them. And they're gonna be like, "Oh, like this isn't what I ordered, this is weird." But nothing happens beyond that. Like they'll just be like, "Oh, but it's fine though, it's all good." And then there's
Mm.
not really like a score you can earn for making the perfect drink, or there's not like a summary at the end of the day where it says like, 5 drinks ordered and 3 were correct. Like it just kind of seems inconsequential. And I tried to get them all right, and
Right.
there are like some different dialogues, I guess, that happen if you get it right, but overall I don't think it really affects the game. Like it doesn't really change what happens in the character's story arc, really anything like that as far as I could tell. So it kind of like was a letdown in that way too, where I was hoping for some kind of like, success in terms of being a good barista on top of the visual novel aspects. And so I just feel like although the game has a lot of elements that I really like, it just doesn't quite come together in that holistic package that I was really hoping for a game with like the premise of what this is offering.
That's a shame. I'm glad you've reviewed it to me because when this came to Game Pass, I had my eye on it as well because it did look like it had the potential to be one of those indie games that was very just like slice of life, and that appeals to me too. Just that sort of everyday get to know some characters, just kind of maybe relate to a few or get some different perspectives. But after hearing you talk about it, I definitely think that I will just pass on this one. It doesn't seem like my kind of thing. Like
Yeah.
normally romance is not the kind of stuff I go for, even when especially when it's that kind of light, sort of like awkward, like almost like juvenile kind of take on romance.
Yeah.
And you know what, too, the coffee thing's a little disappointing because when you mentioned what's funny, what came to mind when you were talking about having to pick which coffee is correct is I was thinking, do you remember Diner Dash?
Yeah.
Those old like Flash games? It reminded me of something like that. And those games, like, I don't know if they're good now, but back in the day, they were so fucking fun. Like, I remember getting the free trial just like over and over and over again for those games.
Yeah. Those were
and I
great.
thought maybe it might kind of like recreate that a little bit, but
I wish
if
like that was what this was, if that was the gameplay, and like, oh man, I don't care what kind of story it was telling me, I would have played that no matter what.
Dude.
Yeah. What a game. Shout out to that. Yeah, but anyway, this is Coffee Talk. I mean, there's a little bit more to it, but nothing else really, I think, super worth mentioning. So if what I said appeals to you and like that kind of stuff is your jam, or you're just really drawn in, like, I wouldn't say it's a bad game, but it just wasn't kind of the right vibe for necessarily what I was looking for. Anyway, let's change topics.
The art is amazing. Art is amazing. I will say before we go, just looking at this on the screen, like, it's a very pretty game.
It is, and it's got great vibes. Like, I think that's the best thing about the game is just like, if you want to just vibe and chill, like it's got that rain kind of pattering down. Like I said, it's got the lo-fi kind of chill music. Like, the aesthetic is cozy. It makes you want to sit on the couch with your own cup of coffee and like a blanket and to play it. Like, it's the idea is so nice. I just hope that you like the game if you decide to try it. Anyway, let's change topics here a little bit because we have another game to talk about here, which is, of course, one of my personal favorites that I had been recommending. We talked about a little bit on the show. I think you mentioned you're going to start it. So here you are. We got Inscryption, Kate. Take it away.
Not be the more opposite vibe to Coffee Talk. I loved Inscryption. I had been told by multiple people, like, look up nothing, sit down, play, like, you're gonna love it. And
yeah. Oh, and
you guys,
to mention that too before we get into it, this will be spoiler free. So if you're on the silent for Inscryption, you want to get the best experience possible. If there's anything spoilery at all, it'll be super light. We're going to be doing a Inscryption spoiler cast in the near future where we just break it all open and talk about everything. But for this, you're safe, or you can just use the timestamps below to skip towards the next section if you'd rather completely miss all of this too.
Yeah, so Inscryption's definitely one of those games where it is hard to talk about without, spoiling anything. But we'll do our best. And it's really a sum of all its parts kind of game, I think. So you kind of start out and what the premise sells you on and what you'll see in the footage is it's kind of like a creepy card game. Deck builder sort of style is what it gets sold on. And that's not wrong. There, it's not necessarily indicative of the whole game, but it's not wrong. And I'm on board just because I think the card game is strong in its own right, especially after having beat the game. And there's a mod after you unlock afterwards that is basically just like a free play of the card game that takes away all of the story elements. And I've been just sitting and like playing that quite a bit as well. So I think that's a good showing of like how well the card game stands on its own right.
Yeah, I've been playing that myself
But
too ever
there's
since
a
you've been talking to me about this, because I beat the game last year, but you've got me back in like playing that endless mode just because of how much you've been reminding me of what
Mhm.
a special game this was, like the first time playing through.
Yeah, so I think this is definitely an experience game as much as it is a game, but I would like to stress that like a lot of those times that style of game is really exciting the first time you play it. But then when you look back on it, it's not necessarily the game was that fun, it was just that it was an exciting experience. But I think what Inscription does really well is it ties all of its parts together so well that it is an incredible like game where you every like hour you'll have a oh my god moment, like holy shit, like your mind gets blown. But it also I think just holds up really well as a game. Like it's fun even if you take away all the trappings,
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
something a lot of games do. But trappings as well are fucking cool. Like you start out the game and you're kind of in this like really creepy cabin, and you've got to play this like horror style card game where like instead of having resources of like mana to play your cards, your resource is like sacrificing smaller creatures to play bigger creatures, which is creepy, and the guy you're playing against is an absolute fucking whack job.
Well, you can't even
Like
see who he
he's
is at
like
the
a
start,
horror
like
villain.
you don't even really know what the situation is other than these scary eyes and like these kind of hands that will reach for you, it's really mysterious as you
Yeah.
before you can peel back any of the layers.
And yeah, you're kind of dropped into it in the middle, and like it's creepy, and there's definitely a vibe of like you have to figure out what's going on. And so it has elements of like puzzle solving and mystery, but they tie it into the gameplay in a really interesting way where stuff you do in one aspect of the game like ties over to different aspects of the game that you wouldn't necessarily have expected, or that are really like light bulb clicky moments when they do happen.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
If that makes sense.
I
It's
think it
so
makes sense.
hard
I mean,
to
like you said, it's
explain
so hard to
it.
talk about the game, right? Like, I think one of the coolest things that's I mean, maybe this is the closest we'll get to spoilery about the game, I guess. But you would have
Mhm.
seen the footage if you're watching a video version of the podcast. And the coolest thing about this game is it's if you're not a big card game person, because it is a roguelite deck builder at its heart, right? Like you are going through runs and like building a
Mhm.
deck. And if you're not a big card game person, if you like, oh, I wish this wasn't a card game because the vibe is really cool, but it's not for me. Like I think this is the one worth trying because it's so much more than just a card game. And you'll have seen, like you said, like you're in this cabin,
Mhm.
you're physically sitting at a table to play the game against whoever your opponent is. You'll find out later. But you can get up from that table at any time you want, and actually,
Mhm.
you can WASD or ASWAD, as you could say, your way around the cabin as you want to go. You can kind of look around, and there's different trinkets you can interact with and solve different like escape room sort of style puzzles that then can unlock you further cards, and different things can happen. Like there's a lot going on beyond the card game, and if the card game's like a turn off for you because you don't like that style, like it's really worth getting into, especially since the card game, at least in my opinion, I'm like moderately experienced with deck builders, right? Like you're more so, but it's not like challenging in the way that other deck
Mhm.
builders are. It's quite simple and easy to grasp, and it builds on itself slow enough to where even if
Yeah.
you're not really familiar, you'll be able to grasp it and succeed pretty easily, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, one of the things this game does extremely well is the pacing. And so sometimes when you sit down to start a card game, you're hit with like 30 different types of cards and mana systems, and it's just very overwhelming. Like you almost feel like you need a glossary to sit and figure out what's going on before you even get started. But with Inscription, it starts you out very small and simple and just consistently builds on it. So you might only have like a handful of cards at your disposal when you first start the game, but you will unlock things slowly. So here's now one new thing, and you do another run, like here's one new thing. Next run, all right, here's another new thing. And then, you solve a puzzle and it's like, okay, great, you found this out. So now you've got that in your arsenal, and you're constantly just getting breadcrumbed to the next thing to either learn or unlock or discover. And I found that the pacing was so perfect for me. Like I never felt like I was just doing the same run over and over again. I always felt like there was something new being given to me, but at the same time, it never felt like it was overwhelming or that I had too much pushed at one time.
Yeah, definitely. I think it's got like a perfect amount of pacing, to be honest. I think the only way that the game can really uh have a pacing issue, in my opinion, is like if you kind of get stalled at a certain part of it. Like there was a few times when I feel like I sort of couldn't make that progression that I wanted quite as quickly, and I was like, oh, I'm kind of ending up building this similar sort of deck a couple times, but it's a really uncommon occurrence, I think, and overall the game is always
Mhm.
it's always surprising you. You think you've gotten to the end, for example, and it's not over, and then just things keep
Yeah.
happening, and you just don't know what's gonna happen next by the time you get to a certain point of the game. Like,
Yeah.
it's
That I
crazy.
think is the thing to say without spoiling it is that, like, if you think you know what you're getting into with this game, you have no idea. And then when the game surprises you and you think, "Okay, now I understand what I've gotten myself into," you have absolutely no idea.
Yeah, you don't. And like, just you think you've peeled back all the layers of that onion, and it's just like, no, motherfucker, like there's there's so much more to go. It's
Yes,
great. It's great. And
it's
the thing
great.
that I think is really cool about Inscription as well, and it's become even more apparent to me since I've been playing more of Casey's mod, which is the endless mode, like the additional, like the
Mhm.
roguelite only mode. And it's that, like, Inscription feels like, as you're playing it, like it almost wants you to cheat in a way, like the game wants to present itself as difficult, but at the same time it wants you to feel like you're really getting one over on the systems of the game, and you feel like as you continue to play, you're like, oh man, I've got this really broken combination, like I've really like cheated the system, and this is like so balanced in favor of me. And then when you play Casey's mod afterwards, when you're in out of the regular game and into that, and it's like, no, like this is the game when it's completely balanced, and they've taken out all the extra things that you can kind of do. And this, like, I find Casey's mod so much more challenging than the regular game. And I don't know if it's the same for you, but I'm sure it must be, because I'm struggling a lot more to do well.
100%. I agree, and I think that's kind of the point. Like, we'll obviously save narrative for when we can talk spoilers, but I think the game, like, it's kind of got some meta narrative stuff going on, and so like the game is kind of it's trying to cheat you, but at the same time, it's letting you cheat it back. And like the game 100% like knows and wants you to take advantage of that, but you sort of have to realize at some point, like, hang on, like, can I do this? Oh shit, I can. And yeah, you can make some ridiculously broken stuff, but then the game will be like, all right, well, you did that, so here's now my trap card. Like, what are you gonna do about this? And you're like, oh fuck, like you just changed the
Yeah,
rules.
exactly. Exactly.
So it's cool. I think the one other thing I wanted to talk about, um, that is kind of like good, like spoiler free, is just the presentation of the game as well. Like the style and just the attention to detail, and especially the sound design in this game. Oh my god, like it feels so tangible when you play this. Like it's a card game, and like everyone's played, like, like think of Hearthstone and stuff like that. And like obviously this game plays totally different. But it's like those don't feel like real cards, or that like there's any kind of like tactile sense. Even like something like Slay the Spire, like I wouldn't say like it's a great game, but
Yeah.
I wouldn't say it's
It's
like
more of like a
it
flash
feels
presentation almost, like that sort
yeah,
of
it's not
aesthetic.
tangible, but these cards, like when you play them down and they kind of like wiggle, and like when they hit the board, there's that like the sound of them like scraping into it is so tactile. When you draw one, you get that like the weight of it kind of like pulling against the other cards from the pile. And I think one of my favorite things is that like how the score is balanced is on like some scales,
Hmm.
and the scales get weighed down by every time you attack. It adds like a tooth, because of course that's fucking
Yeah, because
creepy.
it's creepy
It
as
would
fuck.
be a
That's why.
tooth. It's creepy as fuck, and it's like, you're biting into it, whatever. It's a very like aggressive kind of styling to it. But like when the scale flips over with the teeth, they like pour out afterwards, and like if you have a couple, they'll kind of just like pour into the bowl. But if you have like a lot that go in at once, they start to like spill over, and some of them like end on the table and like kind of roll a little bit. And
Hmm.
it's such a like detail they did not need to include. But every single time it happened, like, it was so satisfying to, like, watch them and hear them clink around as they, like, fell out of the scales.
100%, I agree. And like the sound design, I know it. Like Coffee Talk, I just said the biggest praise is like the vibe of the game and the environment it puts you in. Like as good
Mhm.
as it, I mean, Coffee Talk has nothing on the vibe of this game. Like that, the
Yeah.
room you're sitting in is like dusty and there's dust particles, and you feel like you play this game long enough sitting in the dark, and you begin to think your own room is dusty and like dirty. You know, like it's so true. And there's like one of the items you can see. It's like a pair of scissors, and you can use it to cut up one of your opponent's cards. You know, and like even doing that, like it sounds just like if you were to cut like a nice crisp cardboard sort of type piece of paper, you know, like that
Yeah.
cardstock paper. You can just hear
And I'm not gonna spoil what the pliers beside the scissors do, but oh my god, when you use that for the first time,
yeah,
like I was
yeah,
genuinely like unsettled playing this game. Like I got
yeah.
more
More
comfortable
than once,
with it
actually.
as it went on. Yeah, I got more comfortable with it as it went on, and I think it's kind of if you're concerned about horror games, I think the scariest part of the game is the beginning. So you
Yeah.
don't need to worry about it getting like too scary later. But there were times where I'd be, like, sitting at home alone and, like, genuinely, like, "Okay, I'm doing my strategy, like, I think I should add this card to my deck, and I'm really invested in it, but I'm also, like, genuinely kind of scared, I don't wanna lose because 'cause I'm scared of the guy I'm playing against, not because I actually, like, wanna win the card game."
Totally. So if you can't tell everybody, you should certainly play Inscription.
Man.
This is, I don't know how much more we can really say without spoiling it, but this is like a premium must play. It is one of my favorite games of all time. I think you're in the same boat. And
I'm in the same
whenever
boat.
we do a
Yeah.
ranking list next, this game is going to be a challenger. I'm sure of it.
Absolutely. This game is a behemoth. It's up there with like the indie games of like I'd say the quality. Like I've played a lot of good indie games recently. Like
Yeah.
what's that guitar one? Artful Escape and like Unpacking. Like I had
Yeah,
nothing
yeah.
but good things to say about that. We had like Papers, Please like get so
Oh, there's
high on
so
our
many.
list last
I
time.
mean, what even is an indie game these days? Like half the best games in the industry are indies these days, you know?
Yeah, that's true. I was gonna say like those games are all like top tier, but like oh man, Inscription like ooh,
Yeah.
it's in its own tier.
It is. And you know the greatest thing is like it's just so unique. There's no game that does what this game does as a full package. There's games that have done
Mhm.
a lot of different parts of what this game does, but like the full package is something that I don't think has ever really been done before, and it's executed to such a level of polish and consistency the whole
Mhm.
way through the game that it really is like I don't even know how you could
Yeah.
improve it. Like to be honest, like it's that good.
Yeah, I agree. I think I expected like creepy deck building card game light escape room and I was like, "Okay, I'll be satisfied." Like I played that for maybe 4 hours and I was like, "Yeah, I got my money's worth. This is a great game." And then it was like, "Oh, have you even played Inscription? Like you don't even know anything, idiot. Like sit down. You're not even close to being done."
Yeah, yeah. I know you were texting me as you were playing. You're like, "Oh, I think I'm getting to the final
Yeah.
boss. Like I'm nearly done." And I was just sitting there like, "You have no idea. You're not
And
gonna be done."
it's I think what I really value right now, especially with like just the amount of games that come out every single year, and every year you get older and you've got so many more games under your belt, and I've gotten to the point where I so very much value games that make me surprised or games that like give me an experience I've never had before. Because
Hmm.
like as much as I love something like, I fucking loved Elden Ring. I played 160 hours of it. Of course I loved it. But like it felt like, more of the same of something I like. And so I had the same kind of experience with this game I had with Returnal when I first got it and games like that and Unpacking. It's like no game has ever given me this experience before and I don't know if a game will. And like I just appreciate it so much for being like absolutely out there.
Well, there you go, folks. Pick up Inscription ASAP and write in to let us know what you think about it and if you think you're getting close to the end because you're probably not. So, anyway,
Shout out to my friend Stoat.
shout out to Stoat,
Nice
everybody.
shout
Shout
out
out
to
to Stoat
Stoat.
and Stinkbug.
And
All right.
Stink Bug.
So that's going to close out our game portion of the episode today. But of course, we have a fun activity lined up for our featured segment for the second half of the show, which is, of course, some video game Mad Libs. So this is how we're gonna do it, everybody. Of course, this isn't actually really Mad Libs because you have to pay for those. But
Right.
I
This is
luckily
Mad
found a
Takes.
website called Mad Takes, designed actually by someone named Nathaniel Huddleston. So thank you, Nathaniel. Apparently, this website
No,
started back in 2004. So I mean, it's been going for a long time. Everybody, Mad Takes.
now I have a question. Something I've just noticed on this website before we get started.
Hmm.
And for anyone who can't see it, it looks like it was made in 2004,
Yes, it does. I
which
think it
it
was made
was.
in 2004 and not updated too many times, really, since then.
No. And it says Mad Takes at the top with a nice smiley face because obviously emojis are cool. But it's got like 3 taglines, and like, these are the weirdest taglines. So it starts out words, ciphers, like okay, that kind of makes sense. We've got like word games, Mad Libs is kind of like you're creating a very simple cipher, and then it just says in the same kind of area, men.
Yeah, men.
What does that mean?
I don't know. We'll have to email our man Nathaniel and ask him. So
Yeah, so we're here to play some word cipher men.
that's right. That's right. All right, so this is how it's going to work, folks. We're going to do this the best we can. And for anyone watching on YouTube, we've got it up on the screen so you can follow along. But there's 2 Mad Libs on this site called Popular Video Game 1 and Popular Video Game 2. So we're going to go through, and I guess we'll just take turns filling them out and see what we can do. And maybe we'll take turns. You could read one out, right? We could both read one. You
Yeah,
can see?
okay.
All right, we're working on the setup here, everyone. Now that we got the screen sharing set up, we're working out the kinks. So let's get it started, Kate. I'll give you the honor. You can go first and give an adjective to start off this first
Okay.
Mad Lib. Oh, for anyone that doesn't know what a
Okay.
Mad Lib is, by the way, before we get into that, Kate, go ahead. What is a Mad Lib?
Okay, so a Mad Lib are really cute games. Basically, they have like a small little short story that they read out. But what they do is they make you replace words in the story. So they will have like ask you for an adjective and then a noun and then like a name and like various types of words. And you fill them in ahead of time. You pick all the words. And then when you get to the story, your words slot into whatever word was removed from the original story in the hopes that you've now created something substantially more entertaining, or it's just pure nonsense. And it's one of the two.
And it's a 50-50 chance if it'll be funny or not. But anyway, let's start it off, Kate. What's an adjective you'd like to add in?
Saggy, please.
Ooh, good one. Okay. An Italian person's name is the prompt.
So that's for you.
It's either Mario or Luigi, but I'm not going to go with that, of course. I'll go with...
That's what they want. See, that's the thing is you can kind of guess sometimes what they want you to go for is obviously Mario, so I'm
going to go with Fat Tony.
Fat Tony!
From The Simpsons, of course,
like
everybody. Fat Tony.
Okay, right, so the next one for me is an occupation. I'm gonna put a personal trainer.
Ooh, that's a good one. Okay, verb ending in ing. I will say it's got to be video game themed, right? I'm gonna use a video game term here.
Right.
I will say, what's it gonna be? Respawning.
Okay, I like it.
Got to throw some game terms in there, some cliched game terms.
That's right. So I've got a plant, but it has to be plural. So let's go with, I don't know, there's no funny plants, huh?
No,
Plants
not really.
Are just like, just bushes.
Bushes. All right.
Nice and simple.
Adjective. I'm going to say cracked.
Oh, that's a good one. So now I have a noun, but it has to be plural again, but it doesn't have to be another plant. So I will put bonnets.
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 Okay, and my noun will be a Nintendo 64.
Okay, and then finally, I get to close off with the name of the person in the room. So James, I think it's going to be you.
All right, perfect. Okay, so I'm going to generate this, and Kate, if you want to, I'll give you the honor of reading the first Mad Lib.
Okay, I will read our first.
We're going to generate everybody, pray it's funny, and we're sorry in advance if it's secondhand embarrassment.
All right, this is popular video game number 1. Saggy Fat Tony Brothers. Already off to a good start. Saggy Fat Tony Brothers is a popular video game where you control a personal trainer as he runs through levels respawning on enemies and eating bushes to get cracked and fire flowers so that he can throw bonnets at enemies. He does all this to save the Nintendo 64 from the evil James. That's so bad.
Saggy Fat Tony Brothers.
That's one of the worst Mad Libs I've ever read, but I do like Saggy Fat Tony Brothers.
I thought it was pretty funny that you control a personal trainer as they run through levels. Like that's pretty funny.
He'd probably be good at it. Honestly, I think the Saggy Fat Tony Bros sound like they'd be better at the job than like the Plumber Bros.
Probably, yeah. Okay, let's do the next one. I'll go first this time, and I will get to read this one. I'll start off. I got a girl's name. I'm going to go with the name of my hedgehog. It's Clementine.
Nice.
I have a pet hedgehog, everybody, just in case you didn't know.
Hedgehog?
Hedgehog.
All right, I've got a noun, so I'm going to go with pipe wrench.
Ooh. Okay, a boy's name now. I get a boy's name. I'll go with Neville, Kate's cat.
I knew you were going to say that.
Yeah. Well, how could I not after putting Clementine?
Yeah. He didn't behave well enough to deserve it, but he's here. Okay, we got another noun. Let's go for a popsicle.
Popsicle, okay. Verb ending in S. Let's see. Stalking. Oh no, that's not an ing. It's an S. Ooh.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see.
You put stalks.
Stalks? I don't know if I like that as much.
Okay.
Let's see. I'll put sweats.
Sweats. Okay, I've got another noun. Sometimes they come to you like immediately, and other times you have to think about it. And when the second you're thinking about it, you're like, "Oh, this is gonna be terrible." Let's go with a lampshade.
Lampshade, okay. I feel like that's a classic Mad Lib answer. You know, the lampshade.
It is,
like,
right? Like, there's something about it.
Noun. I'm gonna go with undergarments.
That's a classic Mad Lib too. You gotta throw underwear into it somewhere.
It is, yeah.
All right, so we've got plural animals now. So I'm gonna do a herd of buffalo.
Okay, buffalo, and I will go with meerkats.
They are often seen together. So I've got a verb, and I will say 360 no scope.
Damn. The most capital G gamer verb there is out there.
I mean, this is popular video game too. If it's not a shooter, I don't know what it is.
All right, an adjective. Let's see. I'll go with scrambled.
Okay, I've got another noun, and I want a hot cross bun.
Nice. Verb. I'm gonna go with deep squat.
Deep squat. Yes, we've really unlocked our Mad Lib potential now. And the final adjective is
It's got to be a good one.
It's gonna be vacuous.
Vacuous. How do you spell vacuous, Kate?
That is a good question.
VACUOUS?
Vacuous. Like the vacuous ROM.
Yeah. I knew that's where you got it from, by the way.
Yeah. Like VACOUS.
Okay, whatever. It doesn't matter. I'll just say
VACUOUS.
Okay, I spelled it right, everybody. Hey, high five. All right. Okay, I'm gonna click go mad, and I'm gonna read this hopefully hilarious story. Everybody cross your fingers. I want everyone's fingers crossed right now. Okay, everyone pull your car over. Cross your fingers.
Pull your
if you're listening in the car, you gotta cross your fingers.
Yeah, put your kid down.
Put your kid down. That's right. All right, let's go for it. All right. In Clementine, the pipe wrench of time, you play as Neville, a young boy who has no popsicle.
Oh no!
No. In this adventure, he sweats with his trusty lampshade and many other undergarments from his inventory. He travels through time working with buffalo and meerkats to 360 no-scope the scrambled hot cross bun and deep squat Clementine, the vacuous princess.
Oh no.
You know what? I don't think it's overly funny either, but I definitely will now refer to Clementine as the vacuous princess. That is her nickname.
Vacuous princess. It's so good. I don't know exactly what it means to deep squat. Like
I figured you'd be holding her and then doing a squat, like you're,
right,
you
holding
know,
and doing a deep squat. I mean, there's definitely some interpretations you could have to deep squatting a vacuous princess.
amazing.
Maybe if Coffee Talk had been a little more ambitious, that's where it would have ended up.
That's right. Okay, everyone. Well, that was Mad Libs. I hope it turned out reasonably funny for you. Maybe it was kind of funny. It was all right. All right, it was all right.
Yeah, I think they're genuinely terrible, but
They,
that's how Mad Libs go.
that's what 1 in 10 Mad Libs is just side-splittingly funny though. That's how it is. Okay, everybody. Before we get out of here for today's show, of course, like I mentioned at the top, we always close out with a listener mail question, and of course, that email again, if you wanted to send us a question in of your own, is cloudcontrolpod@proton.me. And you can write in just like our good pal Nick from the Loud Thumbs podcast did for our question today, which Kate will read now. Thanks, Nick.
Yeah, thanks, Nick. And I think also as well, they're covering a similar question on their next show if you wanted to check out more fun stories, because he's written in and he wants to know what our best rage quit or sore loser story is, which is so funny because obviously like that's never a good look, but you do come across those people that just like are having a day and cannot handle what's just happened.
I know. You know what's funny is when you oh shoot. I just hold on, pause the podcast. I closed my stream and it screwed up the cameras.
Oh, I see. Okay.
I completely forgot about that. I was trying to save my
At
internet
least you
bandwidth.
noticed.
I had to save my internet bandwidth, and there we go. Okay. So I'll just reintroduce listener mail and let's do it again.
Okay.
Let me just reopen the closed tab. Okay. Get back to where we were. Okay, everybody. So before we close out the show, as we always do, we like to end with a listener mail question. And this week, surprise, is no different. If you want to write in a question, it'd be really cool, and ask us our mind on something, you can do so at CloudControlPod@proton.me. Just like our good friend Nick did for the question on today's show. Of course, from the Loud Thumbs podcast, you can check him out. He's been on a guest on our show before, although not on Cloud Control, so we'll have to remedy that eventually. But thanks for the question, Nick, and let's hear what he has to say.
Yeah, so he wants to know, and I think this is cute actually. They're answering it on their upcoming episode as well if you want to hear more fun stories. But he wants to know what our best rage quit story or like a sore loser story from gaming is. Which genuinely, like, it's kind of awful, but at the same time, like, genuinely you get some funny moments with stuff like that.
Yeah. I was thinking about this question when Nick submitted it, because I mean, I don't think I think you're the same as me. Like, I'm not really a rage quitter. Like, I don't get a lot of anger when I'm playing games, and I think a lot of it, like, I was kind of thinking is like, I think it's because I don't really play a lot of competitive games. Like, to me, usually rage quitting is like when you're in a tough competition, like single player stuff, not quite the same way. And like something like Fortnite, it's just so silly. Like, when I play that, it doesn't really make me rage quit. So it was hard to think of an example for this.
Yeah, so I kind of went in the opposite direction of like what funny rage quits have I like seen happen, because I'm the same. Like, even though I've played some competitive games like in the day, and like, my first thought was obviously like League of Legends, because that's the heavy hitter for rage quitters. But like, it never happened to that's where they all congregate.
That and COD, baby. That and COD.
Yeah. But like, I don't do it myself, because I feel like if I'm gonna get to the point where I'm gonna be frustrated, like, I'll just do something else. Like, it's my free time and I'm having fun, and like, if I'm not having fun, I have so many other things I could be doing, like,
exactly.
It's such a weird concept to me to get like so angry, but like,
do you know
that
what
obviously happens.
What this made me think of too is like that early internet video, or like, maybe not early, but like probably like at least 10 years ago. And there's that video of that kid that just freaks out and like demolishes his keyboard and like just, you remember, like smashes it to shit. Like, it's almost like the video's false, like it's fake, that it's so over the top. But it just made me think of that. Like, that's easily the most ultimate freak out I've ever seen in terms of like video game stuff. But
that to me is like, that video is such a freak out where like I don't even find it funny. It just makes me uncomfortable because there's like so much aggression.
I know. I found it funny back in the day. Like, I remember being a kid and like thinking that was hilarious. But now I used to work with youth, and I probably look at that and be like, man, that kid needs some assistance. Like,
Yeah,
it makes me
it's the
sad.
anger issues.
Anyway, we're getting off topic. I'll go first. I'll tell you what I came up with, and it's not really a rage quit moment as much as it is like just like something. Sometimes we get salty playing Rocket League. Okay, another one of our former guests on the show, Mr. Del Monster, streams over on twitch.tv/Mr. Del Monster, otherwise known as Mike Del Monte. He and another friend of ours, Jeevan and I, we play Rocket League from time to time. We haven't played in a while, but that game is just the one instance of like, man, you get salty playing Rocket League sometimes, and it's got that competition of sport, and like we do play on ranked, and it's not like we get angry, but it's just like if the games don't go the way we want, it starts to be like, especially I feel like I'm gonna throw my friends under the bus here. They get saltier than I do. And they're always like, how did he touch that before me, this kind of stuff. And the funniest part is like it doesn't really ever get that bad, like it's more like joking around. But the part that is the most saltiest to me, and it just makes me laugh, is at the end of the game you'll write like GG or like good game or whatever, and you can preset them in Rocket League. Jeevan, our friend, he changed one of his presets to be BG for bad game, and so whenever the other team is playing really annoyingly, like they're trying to just bump your car out of the way and like doing kind of like trolleys sort of strategies, he just writes BG at the end of the game, and on our chat he'll just be like a fucking joke, like bullshit, just like complaining under his breath, and it just makes me laugh. Like I can't help but get enjoyment out of it. And so even though like sometimes I'm salty too because can be frustrating, like I just end up laughing because of the circumstance and the two of them like going back and forth about different like physics in the game and stuff like that. So that's the best I could come up with. I really don't have a better example from my own experience, but I'm excited to see what you had to say.
BG is so simple. I love it. It's so funny. Yeah. I mean, I'm the kind of, I don't have anything from like that I've done, but I witness funny things. Like I'm the person, like we play HOT sometimes, and we usually have either like a 4 or a 5 stack. And so we'll get that like 5th person that's sometimes an asshole. But like, even if it's just 5 of us, I write GG at the start of the game and all my friends like slag me off for it. Like it's just us. Like we're all in a voice chat. Why'd you write GG? Or like, oh no, like good luck, have fun, and like at the start and like GG at the end, whatever. But the best rage quit I've ever seen was just because it's such a funny thing that's like kind of stuck. Is that one time we were playing League of Legends, and I used to play it with like my boyfriend at the time, and they'd come out with 2 characters that were like a couple, and that was like their lore, like they were whatever, and they had all these voice lines, and were always like, oh, like calling each other like terms of endearment and things, and they were like a couple champions, and they fit the roles that we played. So we kind of stopped playing League, but we're like, oh, we'll get back into it just to like try out the couple champions. They look fun and it's kind of cute, whatever. And so we'd gone on, and in League of Legends, there's like modes where you can like queue up in like long queues that give you your roles, or you can kind of like queue up into like faster queue times where like the agreed upon terms are that like you just type in the chat as quickly as you can what role you want, and then like whoever was top in the chat gets it. And then you lock it in. And so like 9 times out of 10 people are pretty good about it. And you just spam like the role you want in chat, and then you get it. But sometimes people are like jerks and just lock in whatever they want. They don't give a fuck. And so we get in, and we like said what we wanted. We got them. We picked our roles. We locked it in. And then this guy, like, as we were saying what we wanted to do, this guy like takes one of them. He's like being a dick about it. He didn't play by the rules like everyone else. He just takes it. And then so we typed him, we're like, hey man, like we called those roles, and he was like, I don't care. He was like already like off to a good start, like I don't care. So we're like, oh, and then so my boyfriend at the time, he types, he's like, oh well, like like I'm playing with my girlfriend and we wanted to be like the couple characters. Yeah. And he replies back to us, and I'm just gonna say the word assholes, because what he said was way worse than assholes, but I don't want to say it. So he just replies back, he's like, I hope you assholes break up. And then he quit the game. like Mike dropped it and left. And we laughed about him for ages afterwards. So it was such a funny, like, why would you, what a thing to say. Man. Like, and he left anyway, like, he could have just left, but he, like, wanted to tell that to us.
You know, my favorite thing about that story is, like, that's not even the game that made him angry. It's the fact that he didn't get to play a character. The fact
that he didn't play his character. But the best part of that whole story to me now is that, like, we did break up. And like we've talked about it since, and we've laughed about it, as in like, do you think he knows? Like, I hope somewhere
That's
somehow that guy's like logging onto League of Legends, he's picking that character and he's just like got the satisfaction. He's like, yeah.
That's the whole reason the relationship ended, was
Yeah.
that guy cursed it from the minute he said that in the League of Legends chat.
Exactly. He cursed us. We still from time to time laugh about that guy. Like, I hope somewhere he's like laying in bed at night and he's just smiling like, yeah.
Oh man. All right, friends, that has been listener mail, and this has been the podcast. So we're gonna leave it there, I think. Thank you from the bottom of our hearts for joining us for this first ever second episode of the podcast. Again, all our links are in the description of the episode if you would wish to follow along or give us a subscription on YouTube or any of the platforms where you engage with our content. We really appreciate it. Tell your friends, spread the good word, and we'll see you on the next episode. So until then, don't forget, this has been Cloud Control, the gaming podcast that's not just good, it's good enough. We'll see you on the next show.